The suitcase hit the lawn with a thud that echoed through the quiet suburban street. I stood at the curb, my hand still gripping my car door, watching my clothes scatter across the grass I'd mowed just 2 weeks ago. My favorite blue dress, the one I'd worn to my college graduation, landed in a puddle from yesterday's rain. The red heels I'd saved 3 months to buy sat upside down near the rose bushes Gerald always complained about watering. Then I saw her. Brittany stood in my bedroom window, wearing what looked like my silk robe, holding a coffee mug. My coffee mug. The one with "Boss Lady" printed on the side that my team had given me last Christmas. She wasn't hiding. She was watching. Smiling. I'd been married to Gerald for 7 years. We'd dated for 2 before that. 9 years of my life, and this was how it ended. With my underwear on display for the neighborhood and his girlfriend drinking from my favorite cup. My phone buzzed with notifications. I didn't need to check to know what they were. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down was probably already posting about this on the neighborhood app. The teenagers across the street had their phones up, recording everything. This would be on social media within minutes. Gerald came out the front door next. He walked with this swagger, this confidence that made my stomach turn. He'd put on the cologne I'd bought him for his birthday. His shirt was pressed. He'd actually taken time to dress nice for this moment. "You can pick up your stuff," he called out, not even coming close to where I stood. "The locks are changed. This is Brittany's place now." Brittany's place. The house I'd bought with the money my grandmother left me. The house I'd purchased 3 months before Gerald and I got married. The house that had only my name on the deed because my mother, bless her suspicious heart, had insisted I keep it separate. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I pulled out my phone and made one call. "James Morrison, please. Tell him it's Naomi Fletcher. He'll take the call." Gerald laughed. Actually laughed. "Calling your lawyer? Good luck with that. You think you're getting this house? Think again. Possession is 9/10 of the law, baby." Baby. He called me baby while his girlfriend watched from our bedroom window wearing my clothes. I leaned against my car, a sleek silver sedan I'd bought myself after closing my biggest real estate development deal. I'd parked it in the driveway thousands of times. Now I was blocked from my own home. "James? It's happening. Can you come now?" "Yes, he's here. She's here too. The neighbors are recording everything." 30 minutes? Perfect. I ended the call and looked up at Gerald. "Someone will be here in 30 minutes. Your lawyer can't do anything," Gerald said, but something in his voice wavered. "I've been living here. I have rights. We'll see." I sat on the hood of my car and waited. I didn't look at my belongings scattered across the lawn. I didn't look at Brittany in the window. I didn't look at the neighbors whispering and recording. I looked at my phone and opened my banking app. The account I'd set up 6 months ago, the one Gerald didn't know about, showed a healthy balance. Every paycheck for the past 6 months had been split. Half went to our joint account like always. The other half went into my private account. The storage unit I'd rented 3 months ago held my important documents, my grandmother's jewelry, and the original deed to the house. The safety deposit box at the bank held my passport and the backup drives with all my business files. Gerald thought I was blindsided. He thought I was broken. He had no idea I'd been preparing for this since the day I smelled unfamiliar perfume on his collar and found a receipt for a hotel room in a city where he claimed to have a work conference. That was 8 months ago. I'd hired a private investigator. I'd consulted with James. I'd moved my assets quietly, carefully, legally. I'd known this day was coming. I just hadn't known it would happen while I was returning from a business trip in Atlanta, or that he'd be cruel enough to put on a show for the neighbors. Mrs. Patterson walked over, her small dog pulling at the leash. "Honey, are you okay? Do you need to call someone? You can stay with us tonight." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, but I'll be fine. Help is on the way." "That man should be ashamed of himself," she said, loud enough for Gerald to hear. "Throwing a woman's things on the lawn like trash. And that girl in the window has no shame either." Gerald's swagger faltered. He turned and walked back toward the house, but he kept looking over his shoulder at me. I checked my watch. 25 minutes to go. A few more neighbors came outside. Mr. Chin from next door. The Johnsons from across the street. The Rodriguez family from the corner house. They didn't approach, but they watched. They witnessed. Gerald came back out. "You can't just sit there. You're trespassing." "I'm on the curb. Public property. You're making a scene." "I'm sitting on my car." "You're the one who threw suitcases on the lawn." Brittany came outside now, still wearing my robe. She was younger than me, maybe 25 to my 33. Blonde hair, thin, confident, in that way women are when they think they've won. "This is awkward," she said, like we were meeting at a coffee shop instead of at my house where she was stealing my life. Gerald told me you two were basically over. Is that what he told you? He said you were cold. That you cared more about work than him. That you hadn't been a real wife in years. I almost laughed. I'd cooked dinner 5 nights a week. I'd supported his career when he wanted to change jobs. I'd paid for his mother's medical bills when she got sick. I'd been a real wife. He'd been a fake husband. And you believed him? I asked. Brittany shrugged. He seemed genuine. He's married. You're sleeping with a married man in his wife's house, wearing her clothes. What about that seemed genuine? Her confidence cracked just a little. He said he was leaving you. And yet, he waited until I was out of town to change the locks instead of asking for a divorce like an adult. A black Mercedes pulled up. James Morrison stepped out, carrying a leather briefcase. He was 50-something, gray at the temples, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who never lost. 28 minutes. He'd made good time. Naomi, he said, shaking my hand. I have everything we need. Gerald's face changed. The swagger disappeared. What is this? James pulled papers from his briefcase. Gerald Fletcher, I'm attorney James Morrison. I represent Naomi Fletcher, the sole legal owner of the property located at 2847 Maple Street. You are hereby notified that you are unlawfully occupying her property. You have 24 hours to vacate, or the sheriff will remove you and all your belongings. That's impossible, Gerald said. I live here. We're married. It's community property. The house was purchased by Mrs. Fletcher prior to your marriage using inheritance funds, which under state law remain separate property. Her name alone is on the deed. You have no legal claim to this residence. I watched Gerald's face go from red to white in seconds. Additionally, James continued, Mrs. Fletcher has documented evidence of your affair and your hostile removal of her from the property. She will be filing for divorce based on adultery. Given that you have no claim to the house and significant evidence exists of marital misconduct, you should expect an unfavorable settlement. Brittany stepped back, her hand dropping from Gerald's arm. You can't do this, Gerald said, but his voice was small now. She already has, James replied. The papers are filed. The locks you changed will be changed again by a locksmith who will arrive in 1 hour. If you're inside when he arrives, the police will remove you. I suggest you start packing. I stood up from my car. Gerald, you should have asked for a divorce like a man instead of playing these games. Naomi, wait, he said, reaching for me. We can talk about this. No, we can't. You threw my belongings on the lawn. You brought your girlfriend into my house. You thought you could take everything from me, but you forgot something important. What? I'm smarter than you. I've always been smarter than you. I just loved you too much to let it show. James handed Gerald the papers. 24 hours, Mr. Fletcher. We left them standing there on the lawn, surrounded by my scattered clothes and their shattered plans. I got in my car and drove to the hotel where I'd already reserved a suite. Behind me, I could hear Gerald yelling, but I didn't look back. The revenge wasn't what he'd done to me. The revenge was what I'd been preparing to do to him for months, and he just walked right into it. 9 years earlier, I met Gerald at a company mixer. I was 24, fresh out of graduate school with a master's degree in urban planning, working for a small real estate development firm. He was 27, charming, working in sales for a tech company. He had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. You look bored, he'd said, handing me a glass of wine. These things aren't really my style, I'd admitted. My boss made me come. Same. But now I'm glad I did. It was a simple beginning. We dated for 6 months before he said he loved me. A year before we moved in together. 2 years before he proposed on a beach in California, the sunset behind him, the ring modest but thoughtful. My mother had concerns. Take your time, she'd said when I showed her the ring. Make sure this is what you want. I love him, Mom. I know you do, baby. But love isn't always enough. Make sure he loves you the same way. And protect yourself just in case. I'd laughed it off. Gerald was good to me. He supported my career. He talked about our future with genuine excitement. He wanted kids someday, a big house, a dog, the whole picture. But my mother was insistent about one thing. When my grandmother died and left me $200,000, my mother made me promise to keep it separate. Buy something in your name only, she'd said. Property. Investment. Something that's yours no matter what happens. I thought she was being paranoid, but I'd agreed to make her happy. So when I found a 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood, I bought it with my inheritance. The closing was 3 months before the wedding. Gerald had been thrilled. "This is perfect," he'd said, walking through the empty rooms. "Our first home." "My first home," I'd corrected gently. "But ours to live in together." He kissed me then, spinning me around in the living room. "I can't wait to make memories here." We got married in a small ceremony with 50 guests. My mother cried during the vows. Gerald's mother, Barbara, hugged me and called me daughter. Everything felt right. The first year was good. Gerald got a promotion. I started taking on bigger projects at work. We painted the bedroom a soft green. We adopted a cat named Pepper. We hosted Thanksgiving dinner for both our families. The second year things were still solid. Gerald traveled more for work, but that was normal. I was traveling too, visiting development sites, meeting with investors. We were both building our careers. The third year I got promoted to senior project manager. My salary doubled. Gerald congratulated me, took me to dinner, told everyone he was proud of his successful wife. But something shifted after that. It was small things at first. Comments about how much I worked. Questions about whether I was planning to slow down. Jokes about me being the breadwinner that didn't quite sound like jokes. "You're never home," he said one night when I came back from a week-long trip to Houston. "I was working," I'd replied. "Same as you do when you travel." "It's different." "How is it different?" He didn't have an answer. The fourth year we started fighting more. About money, about time, about whose career was more important. I wanted to hire a cleaning service. He said it was a waste. I wanted to renovate the kitchen. He said we should save money. I wanted to visit my mother for Christmas. He wanted to stay home. I started noticing the way he looked at other women. Not obvious stares, but lingering glances. The way he mentioned female coworkers more often. How he started working late more frequently. The fifth year I found the first real evidence. A text message that popped up on his phone while we were watching television. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," with a heart emoji. From someone named B. "Who's B?" I'd asked. "Brittany from work. We have a project together." "Why is she sending you heart emojis?" "She sends them to everyone. It's just how she texts." I'd wanted to believe him. So I did. Or I pretended to. The sixth year the distance between us became a canyon. He slept on his side of the bed. I slept on mine. We stopped having date nights. We stopped talking about the future. We became roommates who happened to be married. I threw myself into work. I led the development of a mixed-use project that put my firm on the map. I got another promotion. My salary hit 6 figures. I bought myself nice things because Gerald had stopped noticing when I dressed up. "You're different now," he'd said one morning over coffee. "Different how?" "Harder. More focused on yourself." "I'm focused on my career." "That's not the same as being selfish. You used to care about us." "I still care. But us only works if both people are trying." "Are you trying, Gerald?" He didn't answer. That was when I knew. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew. My husband was cheating on me, or planning to, or already had been for longer than I realized. I called my mother that night. "Mom, I think Gerald is having an affair." She didn't sound surprised. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I don't have proof." "Do you want proof, or do you want to decide what's best for you first?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, baby, sometimes we know the truth before we can prove it. The question is, what are you going to do with that truth? Are you going to fix it, or are you going to protect yourself?" I thought about it for days. Did I want to fix my marriage? Did I believe it could be fixed? Did I even want to try? The answer I realized was no. But I wasn't going to leave with nothing. I wasn't going to let Gerald paint me as the bad guy or take what I'd built. That was when I started planning. I hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, he had photos of Gerald and Brittany having lunch together, holding hands across the table. Within a month, he had photos of them entering a hotel together in the middle of the afternoon. I saved everything to a secure drive. I consulted with James Morrison, a divorce attorney my colleague recommended. I told him everything. He laid out my options. "The house is yours free and clear," he'd said. "Your inheritance is protected. Your retirement accounts can be split, but you're the higher earner, so that works in your favor. The joint savings account can be divided. With evidence of adultery, you're in a strong position. What do I need to do? Document everything. Move your new income into a separate account. Make copies of all financial records. And when you're ready, we file." I'd started that day. Every paycheck got split. Half to the joint account so Gerald wouldn't notice anything different. Half to a new account at a different bank. I opened a safety deposit box and stored my important documents. I rented a storage unit and slowly moved my grandmother's jewelry, my important papers, anything I couldn't replace. I kept living with Gerald, kept sleeping in the same bed, kept pretending everything was normal. Because I was waiting for the right moment. The moment when I had everything lined up perfectly. The moment when he would learn that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of his life. That moment came when I found emails between Gerald and Brittany. He wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to divorce me and take half of everything, including the house. Your lawyer says we can argue the house is marital property, Brittany had written. If we can get the house, we're set, Gerald had replied. She makes good money, so I'll get alimony too. I've been married to her long enough to deserve half of what she's built. Reading those words was like ice in my veins. He wasn't just cheating. He was plotting. He thought he could take everything I'd worked for, everything my grandmother had left me, and give it to the woman he was leaving me for. That was the moment I knew I wouldn't feel guilty about what I was planning. That was the moment I stopped being sad and started being strategic. I documented the emails. I updated James. I prepared for war. When this happens, I told James, I want it to be clean and fast. I want him removed from my house. I want the divorce filed immediately. I want him to understand he gets nothing. He won't see it coming, James said. Good. That's exactly how I want it. The moment came 3 months later when I went to Atlanta for a business conference. Gerald thought it was his perfect opportunity. Change the locks, move Brittany in, present me with a done deal. What he didn't know was that I'd been expecting something exactly like this. I'd told James to be on standby. I'd already filed preliminary divorce papers that just needed my signature to activate. When I saw my suitcase on the lawn, I wasn't surprised. I was ready. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of the next chapter. The one where I took back everything he thought he could steal. The affair didn't start suddenly. It unraveled slowly, like a thread pulled from a sweater. 8 months before the lockout, I came home from work to find Gerald in the shower at 6 in the evening. He usually showered in the morning. When I asked why, he said he'd gone to the gym. His gym bag wasn't by the door where he always left it. 2 weeks later, there were charges on our credit card for restaurants I'd never been to. When I asked about them, Gerald said they were business dinners. With who? I'd asked. Clients. Boring conversations about software integration. You wouldn't have enjoyed it. But the charges were for 2 people and they were at romantic restaurants. The kind with candlelight and wine lists. A month after that, he started working late 3 nights a week. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Like clockwork. Big project, he'd explained. The team needs to put in extra hours. I called his office one Thursday at 7. The receptionist said everyone had left for the day. When I confronted him, he got defensive. I was in a conference room. She probably didn't see me. The lies were getting bigger, but his effort was getting smaller. I hired the private investigator in February. His name was Thomas Reed, and he came highly recommended by James Morrison. Thomas was 60, retired police detective, the kind of man who noticed everything. What do you want to know? He'd asked during our first meeting. Everything. Where he goes, who he sees, how long this has been happening. And if it confirms what you suspect, then I'll know what I'm dealing with. Thomas worked fast. Within 3 days, he had Gerald's routine mapped out. Tuesday nights, Gerald went to Brittany's apartment. Wednesday nights, they went to a hotel. Thursday nights, they had dinner at various restaurants around the city. He's not being careful, Thomas told me. He parks right in front of her building. Uses his real name at hotels. He either doesn't think you'll find out or he doesn't care. The photos were painful to look at. Gerald holding Brittany's hand across a dinner table. Gerald kissing her in a parking lot. Gerald entering her apartment building at 6 and not leaving until 10. But I looked at every single one. I needed to kill whatever love I still had left, and evidence was the best poison for romantic delusion. Do you want me to keep following him? Thomas asked after 2 weeks. Yes. I need a solid timeline. I need to know exactly how long this has been going on. Thomas dug deeper. He found credit card receipts going back 7 months. He found text messages Gerald had deleted but that were still stored in cloud backups. He found emails where Gerald and Brittany talked about their future together. They'd been planning this for a while. Your wife is so focused on work, she'll never see it coming, Brittany had written. She cares more about her career than me anyway, Gerald had replied. When we're together, you'll be my priority. Reading those messages hurt worse than the photos. Not because I still loved him, but because he was lying even to himself. I'd always made time for our marriage. I'd cooked dinners, planned date nights, supported his career. The problem wasn't that I worked too much. The problem was that he resented me for being successful. I saved everything Thomas found. Every photo, every receipt, every text message. I organized it all into a folder labeled Evidence and stored copies in 3 different places. Then I called James Morrison. I have everything, I told him. I'm ready to move forward. Do you want to confront him first? James asked. No. I want to be strategic. What are my options? We met at his office on a Tuesday morning. James laid out the legal landscape. The house is yours, no question. It was purchased before marriage with inheritance money. That's separate property. He has no claim to it. He thinks he does. I've seen emails where he talks about getting the house in the divorce. James raised an eyebrow. He's consulted with an attorney? Apparently. Someone told him he could argue it's marital property because we've lived there together. That attorney is wrong. Or more likely, Gerald misunderstood what he was told. You can't claim someone else's separate property just because you lived there during the marriage. What about everything else? Joint savings account gets split. Retirement accounts get divided based on the time you were married. He might try for alimony since you earn more, but with evidence of adultery, that becomes difficult to justify. I want to protect as much as I can. Start moving your current income into a separate account. Not the savings you had before marriage, that needs to stay documented as yours. But your new paychecks can go wherever you want. Split them if you want to avoid suspicion. That's what I did. Every 2 weeks my paycheck hit my account. Half went to our joint checking like always. The other half went to a new account at a different bank, one Gerald didn't know existed. I opened the safety deposit box and stored my passport, my grandmother's jewelry, the original deed to the house, and copies of all the evidence Thomas had gathered. I rented a storage unit and slowly moved things that mattered. Photo albums from before I met Gerald. My college diplomas. My grandmother's recipe box. Books I'd inherited from my father. Little by little, I extracted myself from our shared life while appearing to still be fully in it. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I still cooked dinner on the nights Gerald bothered to come home. I still asked about his day even though I knew he was lying. I still slept in the same bed, though we hadn't touched each other in months. You seem distant, he said one night in April. I almost laughed. He was cheating on me 3 nights a week and I seemed distant. Just tired from work, I replied. You're always tired from work. I have a lot of responsibility. Maybe you should cut back. Focus more on us. Like there was still in us to focus on. Maybe you should focus more on us too, I said carefully. He looked uncomfortable. What does that mean? It means marriage takes 2 people, Gerald. When was the last time you planned a date night? When was the last time you asked about my projects? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life? I show interest. No, you don't. You show up when it's convenient and disappear when it's not. He got defensive the way he always did when confronted. You're the one who's never home. I travel for work. So do you? The difference is when I'm home, I'm present. Where are you on Tuesday nights? Wednesday nights? Thursday nights? His face went pale. I told you. I'm working. Right. Working. I let it hang there watching him squirm. He didn't know I knew. But I wanted him to understand I suspected. I wanted him to feel uncomfortable. He changed the subject and we never talked about it again. In May, I told Gerald I'd be going to Atlanta for a conference in early June. It was true I did have a conference, but it was also a test. How long will you be gone? He asked. 4 days. Monday through Thursday. I saw the calculation in his eyes. 4 days with me gone. 4 days to do whatever he wanted. That's a long time, he said, but he was smiling. It's an important conference. Good networking opportunities. Of course. You should go. I bet he couldn't wait for me to leave. I told James about the trip. I think this is when he'll make his move. What kind of move? I don't know. But something big. He's been planning this affair for months. He's been talking about taking the house. I think he's going to try something while I'm gone. What do you want me to do? Be ready. Have the eviction papers prepared. Have a locksmith on call. Whatever happens, I want to be able to respond immediately. You really think he'll go that far? I know my husband. Or the man he's become. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'll cry and beg and fall apart. He has no idea who he's dealing with. James smiled. He's going to learn. The weeks leading up to the Atlanta trip were tense. Gerald was nicer than he'd been in months, probably feeling guilty or perhaps already celebrating his upcoming freedom. He cooked dinner twice. He asked about my mother. He even suggested we watch a movie together. It was too little, too late, and it was fake besides. But I played along. The day before I left for Atlanta, I did a final check of everything. My important documents were secured. My separate bank account was healthy. The evidence was stored in multiple locations. James had the papers ready to file. "Are you sure about this?" my mother asked when I called her that night. "I'm sure, Mom. It's going to be hard. It already is hard. At least this way it ends on my terms. I'm proud of you, baby. Your grandmother would be proud too. She was right to make me keep the house in my name. She knew what men could be. Not all of them, but enough. She wanted you protected. I am protected. Because of her. And because of you for making me listen." I flew to Atlanta the next morning. The conference was good, productive, exactly what I'd hoped for. But the whole time I kept my phone close. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know exactly what. The call came on Wednesday afternoon. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, her voice tight with anger. "Naomi, I don't know how to tell you this. But your husband just threw your belongings on the front lawn. There's a woman in your bedroom window. He changed the locks." I closed my eyes and took a breath. Here it was. The moment I'd been preparing for. "Thank you for calling me, Mrs. Patterson. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to handle it." I booked the first flight home. 3 hours later I was landing. 2 hours after that I was pulling up to my house. And there it was. My suitcase on the lawn. My clothes scattered in the grass. Brittany in the window wearing my robe, holding my coffee mug. Gerald thought he'd won. He had no idea the game was already over, and I'd been playing while he thought he was still sitting at the table. I pulled out my phone and called James Morrison. The revenge wasn't what Gerald had done to me. The revenge was what I'd spent 8 months preparing to do to him. James Morrison's Mercedes pulled up exactly 28 minutes after my call. I'd been sitting on the hood of my car, watching Gerald pace on the lawn while Brittany stayed visible in the bedroom window. The neighbors had multiplied. At least a dozen people were outside now, some pretending to check their mail, others openly watching. Mrs. Patterson had brought her husband. The Rodriguez family stood on their porch. Even the teenagers from across the street had come out with their phones raised, recording everything. Gerald had tried to get me to leave twice. First, he told me I was trespassing. When I pointed out I was on the public curb, he'd said I was causing a scene. When I said he was the one who'd thrown luggage on the lawn, he'd gone quiet. Now, watching James step out of his car with that leather briefcase, Gerald's whole posture changed. "Who is that?" Brittany called from the window. "Nobody," Gerald said, but his voice cracked. James walked straight to me first. "Naomi, are you all right?" "I'm fine, James. Thank you for coming so quickly. I have everything we discussed." He pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase. "Shall we?" We approached Gerald together. He backed up a step, then caught himself and tried to look confident. "I don't know who you are," Gerald said, "but this is between me and my wife." "Your soon-to-be ex-wife," James corrected. He handed Gerald the envelope. "Gerald Fletcher, I'm attorney James Morrison representing Naomi Fletcher. Inside this envelope you'll find several documents. An eviction notice, a restraining order preventing you from disposing of any marital assets, and preliminary divorce papers based on adultery." Gerald's hands shook as he took the envelope. "What are you talking about?" "You changed the locks on Mrs. Fletcher's property. The house at 2847 Maple Street is owned solely by Naomi Fletcher, purchased prior to your marriage with inheritance funds. Under state law that makes it separate property. You have no legal claim to this residence." "That's not possible. We're married. I live here." Living somewhere doesn't grant ownership. The deed has one name on it, Naomi Fletcher. You are unlawfully occupying her property. Brittany came outside now, pulling my robe tighter. "Gerald, what is he talking about?" "The house isn't his," I said, looking directly at her. "It's mine. It's always been mine." "He didn't tell you that?" Her face went pale. "Gerald said we'd live here together. He said it was half his." "He lied to you. The same way he lied to me." Gerald ripped open the envelope, pulling out the papers. I watched his face as he read. The color drained from his cheeks. His mouth opened and closed several times before words came out. "This can't be legal." "It's completely legal," James said. "The eviction notice gives you 24 hours to vacate the premises. A locksmith will arrive in 1 hour to change the locks again. If you're still inside, the sheriff will remove you. I suggest you start packing." "But I've been living here for 7 years. That has to count for something." "It counts for nothing regarding property ownership. You have no equity in this house. You've paid no mortgage because there is no mortgage. Mrs. Fletcher owns it free and clear. Your residency here was essentially as a guest of the owner. That's not how she presented it, Gerald said, his voice rising. She said it was our house. And you could live in our house as my husband, I said. But you decided to stop being my husband. So now you don't get to live in my house. James pulled out more papers. Additionally, Mrs. Fletcher has documented evidence of your affair with Brittany Reed. Photographic evidence, text messages, emails, credit card receipts going back 7 months. This evidence supports the divorce filing based on adultery. 7 months. Gerald's eyes went wide. He knew. He understood that I'd known for far longer than he'd realized. You were spying on me, he said. I was protecting myself from a liar and a cheat. Brittany stepped back toward the door. I need to get my things. Your things? I turned to look at her. You mean my robe? My coffee mug? What else of mine have you been using, Brittany? She had the decency to look embarrassed. I'll just grab my purse. Good idea. Because neither of you is staying here. Gerald was still reading the papers, flipping through pages, his panic growing. What about the savings account? The furniture? My retirement. Joint savings get split down the middle, James said. Furniture purchased during the marriage is subject to division. Your retirement account will be divided based on the portion accrued during your marriage. Mrs. Fletcher's retirement is similarly divided, but since she earns significantly more than you, the net effect favors her. So I get half of everything? Half of marital assets acquired during the marriage. Not half of everything. Mrs. Fletcher's inheritance, her property purchased before marriage, and her separate accounts are excluded. This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer. Please do, James said. Any competent attorney will tell you exactly what I'm telling you now. You have no claim to this house, and with evidence of adultery, you're in a very weak position regarding any other settlements. Brittany came back out, now wearing jeans and a shirt, carrying a small bag. She looked at Gerald like she was seeing him for the first time. You told me the house was half yours, she said. I thought it was. You thought? You didn't know? We're married. Houses are usually joint property. But not this one, I said. And you knew that, Gerald. I told you when I bought it that it was in my name only. My mother insisted and you agreed it made sense. You just forgot about that conversation, or you decided to ignore it when you started planning to leave me. Mr. Chin from next door spoke up. He'd come closer during the conversation. I was there at your housewarming party. I remember Naomi saying she'd bought the house before the wedding. She was proud of it. Other neighbors nodded. They remembered too. Gerald looked around at the crowd that had gathered. His public humiliation was complete. The man who'd thrown his wife's belongings on the lawn was being evicted from a house that was never his. Where am I supposed to go? He asked, and for the first time he sounded genuinely lost. That's not my problem, I said. You should have thought about that before you changed my locks. A white van pulled up. The locksmith right on time. A man in his 40s stepped out, carrying a toolbox. I'm here to change the locks at 2847 Maple Street. That's us, James said. The homeowner is right here. He gestured to me. The locksmith looked at Gerald. Sir, I need you to step inside and collect your essential items. You have 30 minutes. 30 minutes? I have 7 years of stuff in there. You have 24 hours to collect everything, James clarified. But you need to leave now so the locks can be changed. You can arrange a time tomorrow to come back with a moving truck. Mrs. Fletcher will not be present, and a sheriff's deputy will supervise. Gerald looked at Brittany. She wouldn't meet his eyes. I thought we were going to be together, he said to her. In your house, Gerald. You said we'd live in your house. You said you'd have money from the divorce. You said a lot of things that aren't true. I didn't lie to you. You lied to yourself. And now I'm part of it. She walked away, heading toward a small silver car parked down the street. Gerald called after her, but she didn't turn around. He stood there, alone on the lawn, holding the papers that destroyed the fantasy he'd built. Gerald, I said quietly, get your things and go. He looked at me with something like desperation. Naomi, can we talk? Can we figure this out? No. Please. I made a mistake. I know I did. But 7 years has to mean something. It did mean something. Past tense. You threw it away when you threw my suitcase on the lawn. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. You've been planning this for months. You absolutely were thinking. You just weren't thinking I'd be prepared. He tried once more. I'm sorry. I'm sure you are. Sorry you got caught. Sorry you don't get my house. Sorry your girlfriend left you. But I don't care anymore, Gerald. Go inside, get your things and leave. The locksmith walked past us toward the front door. Gerald had no choice but to follow. James and I waited outside. The neighbors gradually dispersed, though many kept watching from their windows. Mrs. Patterson came over one more time. "You handled that beautifully," she said. "Thank you for calling me. That man should be ashamed. But I'm glad you were ready for him." 25 minutes later, Gerald came out with 2 suitcases and a box. His laptop bag was slung over his shoulder. He put everything in his car, a sedan he'd bought himself 2 years ago. He looked at me one more time. I looked back, my face neutral. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," James replied. "Any further communication goes through me. Do not contact Mrs. Fletcher directly. Do not come to this property without prior arrangement and supervision. Do not attempt to access any accounts or dispose of any assets. Everything is documented. Any violations will be reported to the court." Gerald got in his car and drove away. The locksmith finished installing the new locks and handed me 3 keys. "All set, ma'am. Windows and doors are secure." "Thank you." James walked me to the door. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine. Surprisingly fine." "That's the feeling of taking back your power. Is it always this satisfying?" He smiled. "Only when you've prepared as well as you did. Most people come to me in crisis. You came to me with a plan. I learned from the best. My grandmother always said, 'Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.' Smart woman. She was." James handed me his card. "If Gerald contacts you directly, don't respond. Forward everything to me. The divorce will take a few months to finalize, but with the evidence we have, it should be straightforward. What if he fights it? He can try. But his attorney will advise him to settle. Fighting costs money, and the outcome won't change. The house is yours, the evidence of adultery is solid, and his claim to alimony is weak given the circumstances." I took the card. "Thank you, James. For everything. You did all the hard work. I just showed up with papers." After he left, I stood in my doorway looking at my house. My house. Not our house. My house. The house my grandmother's money bought. The house my mother made sure stayed in my name. The house Gerald thought he could take. I walked inside and closed the door behind me. Everything looked the same, but it felt different. The air felt lighter. I walked through each room. The kitchen where I'd cooked hundreds of meals. The living room where we'd watched movies. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side for 7 years. There were traces of Gerald everywhere. His books on the shelf. His shoes by the bed. His toothbrush in the bathroom. Tomorrow I'd box it all up. Tomorrow I'd start erasing him from my space. But tonight I just stood in the middle of my living room and breathed. I'd won. I protected myself. I'd been smart when he thought I was naive. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Are you okay, baby?" "I'm better than okay, Mom. It's done. The house is mine. He's gone. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for making me keep the house in my name. You and Grandma saved me. We just gave you the tools. You did the rest." I sat on the couch, my couch in my house, and let myself feel everything. The anger, the sadness, the relief, the satisfaction. Gerald had tried to break me. He tried to take everything. Instead, he left with 2 suitcases and a hard lesson about underestimating women who come from strong women. The locksmith gave me 3 keys. I stood at my front door holding them, feeling their weight. One for me. One for my mother. One for the spare key box. Not one for Gerald. Not anymore. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. The house was quiet. Gerald's presence still lingered in the air, that cologne he wore, the faint smell of his morning coffee. But he was gone. I walked through every room, cataloging what needed to change. In the bedroom, his clothes still hung in the closet. His watch sat on the dresser. His side of the bed was unmade, sheets tangled like he'd left in a hurry. In the bathroom, his razor, his shampoo, his towel on the hook. All of it would go. In the living room, his laptop charging station, his stack of magazines about cars he'd never buy, his favorite throw pillow on the couch. Everything would go. I pulled out my phone and texted my best friend, Tanya. We'd known each other since college, and she'd watched my marriage crumble from the outside. "It's done. He's gone. Can you come over?" Her response was immediate. "On my way. Wine or something stronger?" "Both." Tanya arrived 40 minutes later with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. She hugged me in the doorway, held me tight, didn't say anything for a long moment. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "I think so. It's strange. I feel relieved more than sad." "That's allowed. You've been sad for months. Maybe years." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Gerald and I had eaten breakfast together that morning 8 months ago when I first knew something was wrong. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Tell me everything," Tanya said, pouring wine. I told her about coming home to find my suitcase on the lawn. About Brittany in the window wearing my robe. About calling James and watching Gerald's face when he realized the house wasn't his. "I wish I'd been there," Tanya said. "I would have paid money to see his face." Mrs. Patterson recorded part of it. She said she'd send me the video if I wanted it. "Do you want it?" I thought about it. "Maybe someday. Right now, I just want to move forward." We ate dinner and drank wine and talked about everything except Gerald. Tanya told me about her job, her terrible dating app experiences, her mother's upcoming retirement party. Normal things. Life things. The kind of conversation I hadn't had in months. "Are you going to stay here?" she asked as we cleaned up. "This is my house. Why would I leave? Too many memories, maybe? The memories are just noise. The house is real. The house is mine. I'm not letting him chase me out of my own home." "Good. You shouldn't." Tanya stayed until midnight, helping me strip the bed and put on fresh sheets. We boxed up Gerald's toiletries from the bathroom. We took down the framed photo of our wedding that hung in the hallway. "What do you want to do with this?" Tanya held up the frame. "Garbage. Not even keep it for someday?" "There's no someday where I want to look at that photo. The marriage is over. The reminders can go." We filled 3 large boxes with Gerald's immediate belongings. His clothes, his shoes, his personal items from the bathroom and bedroom. Tomorrow the sheriff would supervise while he collected the rest. After Tanya left, I walked through the quiet house one more time. It already felt different. Cleaner. More mine. I slept in the center of the bed that night, not on my side like I'd done for 7 years. I spread out, taking up space, claiming territory. The next morning Gerald texted me. "I need to get my things." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the text to James Morrison. James replied within minutes. "I'll coordinate with the sheriff's office. Don't communicate with him directly." An hour later James called. "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. A deputy will be present. You don't have to be there." "I won't be. I'll stay with my mother." "Smart. I'll text you when it's done." I called my mother. "Can I come over tomorrow morning? Gerald's getting his stuff." "Of course, baby. Stay as long as you need." That evening I started making lists. Things to change, things to update, things to reclaim. Change the passwords on all accounts. Update beneficiaries on insurance policies. Remove Gerald's name from the emergency contact lists. Cancel his key to my gym. Block his number after this was all over. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was from Brittany. Her voice was shaky. "Naomi, this is Brittany. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I'm the last person you want to talk to. But I need you to know I didn't know the house was yours. Gerald told me it was half his. He told me you two were basically over. He told me a lot of things that weren't true. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For what it's worth." I deleted the voicemail. Her apology meant nothing. She'd slept with my husband in my house, worn my clothes, drank from my mug. Sorry didn't cover that. But I understood something listening to her voice. She'd been lied to too. Gerald was good at lying. He'd lied to me for months. He'd lied to Brittany about who he was and what he had. He'd even lied to himself about how this would play out. The difference was Brittany had chosen to believe a married man. I'd been married to him, trusted him, built a life with him. My betrayal was deeper. My loss was greater. I didn't have energy for her pain. The next morning, I drove to my mother's house. She lived 40 minutes away in the neighborhood where I grew up. The same house where my grandmother had lived before she died. The house that held all my best childhood memories. My mother had coffee ready and breakfast on the table. Pancakes, just like she used to make on Saturday mornings. "How are you really doing?" she asked as we ate. "I'm okay. Some moments are harder than others. But mostly I feel free." "That's good. That's healthy." I keep thinking about Grandma. About how she knew. How she insisted I keep the house in my name. My mother smiled. "Your grandmother lived through a lot. She married your grandfather when she was 19. He was a good man, but life was different then. Women didn't have the protections we have now. She always said, make sure you can stand on your own 2 feet because you never know when you'll have to." She was right. She was right about a lot of things. She'd be proud of you, baby. Not because your marriage ended, but because you were smart enough to protect yourself. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "All clear. He's gone." Deputy said he took about half the furniture. Left the rest. I have photos of everything. I showed my mother the text. Do you want to go see? She asked. Not yet. Let me finish my coffee first. We sat together in her kitchen, drinking coffee, not saying much. Sometimes silence is its own comfort. When I finally drove home 2 hours later, I braced myself for what I'd find. The living room couch was gone. The television too. The coffee table remained, but the end tables were missing. In the bedroom, Gerald had taken his dresser but left mine. The bed frame remained, but he'd taken the headboard we'd bought together. In his office, the desk was gone, the chair gone, the bookshelf empty. He'd taken all his books, his files, his computer equipment. The kitchen was mostly intact. He'd taken some of the pots and pans but left the dishes. He'd taken his coffee maker but left mine. It looked bare in places, but it didn't look empty. It looked like space waiting to be filled with something better. I took photos of everything, sent them to James for documentation, and then I called Tanya. He took half the furniture. Good riddance. It was ugly anyway. I laughed. She was right. The couch had been Gerald's choice, a brown leather monstrosity I'd never liked. The television had been too big for the wall. The end tables didn't match anything. Want to go shopping this weekend? Tanya asked. New furniture for your new life? Yes. Definitely yes. That evening, I ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my living room, eating straight from the box. No husband to impress. No need to use plates or sit at a table. Just me, pizza, and the freedom to be exactly who I was. My phone buzzed with emails. Coworkers who'd heard about the divorce through the office gossip chain, offering support. Friends I hadn't talked to in months, reaching out. Even my cousin in California sent a text. Heard about Gerald. Good riddance. You deserve better. I replied to each one, thanking them, feeling the warmth of people who actually cared about me. Around 9 o'clock my phone rang. Gerald's mother, Barbara. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, Barbara. Naomi, sweetheart. I just heard what happened. I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize for your son's choices. I know, but still. What he did was wrong. Unforgivable, really. I raised him better than that. I appreciate you saying that. I want you to know you'll always be family to me. Even if legally you won't be after the divorce. You've been a good wife to my son. He's the one who failed. Her words meant more than I expected. Thank you, Barbara. That means a lot. If you need anything, you call me. I don't care what Gerald says. You were my daughter for 7 years. That doesn't just disappear. After we hung up, I cried. Not for Gerald, but for the loss of the life I'd built. For the family I'd thought I'd have forever. For the future that wouldn't happen. But the tears didn't last long. Because underneath the sadness was something stronger. Relief. Determination. The knowledge that I'd survived the worst of it and come out standing. I walked through my house one more time before bed. My house. My rules. My future. Gerald had tried to take it all. Instead, he left with half of the furniture and none of the power. I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed him, but because I'd protected myself. Because I'd been smart enough to see it coming and strong enough to handle it. Tomorrow I'd start rebuilding. New furniture, new routines, new possibilities. But tonight, I'd just breathe in the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd done exactly what I needed to do. 3 days after Gerald moved out, I started the real work of reclaiming my space. I'd taken the week off work. My boss had been understanding when I explained the situation. Take the time you need. When you come back, we have that new project to discuss. But right now, focus on yourself. The first thing I did was change everything that could be changed. Passwords on every account. PIN numbers. Security questions. I went through each credit card, each bank account, each online profile, and locked Gerald out completely. Then I started going through the house systematically. Room by room, drawer by drawer, finding all the pieces of our shared life and deciding what stayed and what went. In the kitchen, I found the coffee mug Gerald had given me for our first anniversary. To my beautiful wife, it said in gold letters. It went in the donation box. In the hall closet, I found photo albums from our honeymoon. We'd gone to Hawaii, spent a week on the beach, been genuinely happy. Those photos felt like they were of different people. I put them in a box for storage. Not ready to look at them, not ready to throw them away. In Gerald's office, the one room he'd completely cleared out, I found something I wasn't expecting. There was a filing cabinet he'd left behind. Too heavy to move quickly, I guessed. I'd figured I'd deal with it later, but curiosity got the better of me. The top drawer was empty. The second drawer had old tax returns and insurance documents, things he probably had copies of elsewhere. The bottom drawer was locked. I stared at it for a long moment. Why would Gerald lock a drawer in a filing cabinet he was leaving behind? What was in there that he didn't want me to see, or that he'd simply forgotten about? I found a screwdriver and jimmied the lock. It popped open easily. Inside were files. Bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize. Credit card bills for cards in Gerald's name only. Printouts of emails between Gerald and someone named Todd Peterson. I pulled out the first file and started reading. Gerald had been siphoning money from our joint savings account for over a year. Small amounts at first, 300 here, 500 there. Amounts small enough that I wouldn't notice in the normal ebb and flow of bills and deposits. But over 12 months, those small amounts added up. He'd taken nearly $15,000. The money had gone into a separate account at a different bank. An account he'd opened without telling me. My hands shook as I read through the statements. This wasn't just about the affair. This was financial betrayal. He'd been stealing from our shared savings, money I'd contributed to, money I'd earned. The credit card statements were worse. Charges for hotels, dinners, jewelry. A bracelet for $3,000. A weekend trip to a beach resort for $2,000. Lingerie purchases, flower deliveries, spa treatments. He'd been using credit cards I didn't know about to fund his affair, racking up debt that would have eventually affected both our credit scores. And the emails. The emails to Todd Peterson, who I now understood was the attorney Gerald had consulted about divorce. I need to know my rights regarding the house, Gerald had written. My wife bought it before we got married, but we've lived there for 7 years. That has to count for something. Todd's response was measured. Marriage does not automatically convert separate property to marital property. If the house was purchased with her inheritance before marriage and remains solely in her name, you likely have no claim to it. However, you could argue for equity based on improvements or mortgage payments you've made. We don't have a mortgage. She owns it free and clear. Have you made significant improvements? Renovations, additions, upgrades? Some painting. New appliances. That's unlikely to give you a claim to the property. I'd advise focusing on other marital assets in any divorce settlement. But Gerald hadn't stopped there. Another email dated 3 months later. What if I change the locks while she's out of town? If I establish residency and refuse to leave, does that help my case? Todd's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. That would be illegal eviction and could result in criminal charges. Do not do that. If you want to divorce your wife, file properly through legal channels. Gerald had ignored that advice. He'd done exactly what his own attorney told him not to do. I kept reading. Email after email showing Gerald's escalating plans. His frustration that the house wasn't legally his. His resentment of my income. His conversations with Brittany about their future together in his house. Once I get rid of Naomi, he'd written to Brittany, we can live in the house together. It's in a good neighborhood. Close to both our jobs. Perfect for us. Are you sure she can't fight you for it? Brittany had responded. She can try. But I've been living there for 7 years. No judge will kick me out. And even if she gets the house somehow, I'll get half of everything else. She makes good money. I'll come out ahead. I sat on the floor of the empty office, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal. Not just the affair which I'd known about, but the financial theft, the legal planning, the calculated attempt to steal my house and my assets. He hadn't just fallen in love with someone else. He'd been plotting to take me for everything I had. I took photos of every document, every bank statement, every credit card bill, every email. Then I called James Morrison. James, I found something. Can you come over? What kind of something? The kind that makes our case even stronger. He arrived within an hour. I showed him everything. His expression grew darker as he read. This is financial misconduct. Possibly fraud, depending on how the court interprets it. What does this mean for the divorce? It means Gerald is in serious trouble. He took money from your joint account without disclosure. He hid assets. He planned to illegally evict you from your own property despite knowing he had no legal right to do so. Any judge will see this for what it is. What about the credit card debt? That's his problem. The cards are in his name only. You're not liable for that debt. But the $15,000 he took from your joint savings, you can demand that back, plus any interest or penalties. And the house. The house was never in question. But this evidence shows premeditation and intent to defraud. If he tries to claim he deserves any portion of your separate assets, we can use this to show his character and intentions. I felt something shift inside me. The last tiny piece of sadness or guilt I'd been carrying disappeared. Gerald hadn't made a mistake. He'd been planning this. He'd calculated the best way to hurt me and take what was mine. I want to make sure he doesn't get away with this, I said. He won't. I promise you that. After James left, I called my bank. I reported the unauthorized withdrawals from our joint account. They opened an investigation. I called the credit bureaus and put alerts on my credit report. If Gerald tried to open anything else in my name, I'd know immediately. I called my financial advisor and scheduled a meeting to review all my accounts and investments. Then I called Tanya. You need to come over. No. You won't believe what I found. She arrived with ice cream and anger in her eyes. I showed her everything. That piece of trash, she said, reading through the emails. He wasn't just cheating. He was scheming. For over a year. And he thought you wouldn't find out? He thought I was too trusting. Too focused on work to notice. He underestimated you. Yes, he did. We sat in the kitchen eating ice cream straight from the container, talking through every document I'd found. What's the next step? Tanya asked. James is updating the divorce filing. All this evidence gets added. Gerald will have to answer for the money he took. Good. He should have to answer for all of it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the emails, the planning, the calculation behind Gerald's actions. This wasn't an affair of the heart. This was an affair of opportunity. He'd found someone younger, decided he could upgrade, and planned to take my assets with him. But I'd been smarter. I'd seen it coming. I'd protected myself. At 3 a.m, I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. I made tea and sat at the table looking around at my house. My house that Gerald had tried to claim. My house that I'd protected by keeping my grandmother's legacy separate. Everything my mother and grandmother had taught me about being independent, about protecting yourself, about not relying on anyone else to secure your future, it had all led to this moment. I thought about my grandmother who'd lived through decades when women had fewer rights, less access to money, less power to leave bad situations. She'd learned those lessons the hard way and passed them down to her daughter, who passed them to me. Stand on your own 2 feet, she'd always said. Love someone but never need them so much you can't walk away if you have to. I'd loved Gerald. But I'd never needed him. And when the time came to walk away, I was ready. The discovery of Gerald's financial scheming didn't break me. It freed me. Any tiny doubt I'd had about the divorce, any small question about whether I was doing the right thing, disappeared completely. He'd shown me exactly who he was. A man who would steal from his wife, lie to his girlfriend, ignore his own lawyer's advice, and try to take a house that didn't belong to him. I didn't have to feel guilty anymore. I didn't have to wonder if I could have saved the marriage. There was nothing to save. There probably hadn't been for a long time. As the sun came up, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to recover from this divorce. I was going to thrive. I was going to build a life so good that Gerald's betrayal would become nothing more than a footnote in my story. The evidence I'd found wasn't just ammunition for the divorce. It was validation. Proof that my instincts had been right, my preparation had been necessary, and my decision to protect myself had been the smartest thing I could have done. Gerald had tried to take everything. But I'd made sure there was nothing for him to take. 2 weeks after Gerald moved out, I stood in the paint aisle of the hardware store with Tanya, looking at color samples. What about this one? Tanya held up a swatch called Ocean Breeze. Too blue. I want something calmer. Calmer than Ocean Breeze? That's literally named after calmness. I laughed. Felt good to laugh. I want gray. Something neutral but sophisticated. We settled on a color called Silver Sage. Soft gray with just a hint of green. Perfect for the bedroom. For the living room, I chose a warm cream called Canvas. The kitchen would stay white, but I'd add a backsplash in deep green tiles. You're really doing this, Tanya said as we loaded paint cans into the cart. Every room Gerald touched, I'm changing. New paint, new furniture, new energy. I love it. Fresh start. We spent the weekend painting. Tanya invited 3 other friends and we made it a party. Music playing, pizza delivered, laughter echoing through rooms that had been too quiet for too long. My friend Rachel painted the bedroom while my friend Monica tackled the living room. Tanya and I worked on the kitchen backsplash, carefully placing each tile. This is way more fun than my weekend plans, Monica said, rolling paint onto the walls. And your ex-husband is an idiot for losing this house. He didn't just lose the house, I said. He lost everything else too. His girlfriend left him, his job is investigating him for the affair, and he's about to owe me $15,000 plus legal fees. Good, Rachel called from the bedroom. Karma works fast sometimes. By Sunday evening, the house looked completely different. Fresh paint covered every wall Gerald had touched. The old colors, the ones we'd chosen together, were gone. These were my colors. My choices. My home. The following week, furniture started arriving. I'd gone shopping online, choosing pieces that reflected my style, not compromises between my taste and Gerald's. A new couch in deep charcoal gray with clean lines. Modern end tables in light wood. A coffee table with a glass top that made the room feel bigger. A new television, smaller than Gerald's monster screen, mounted on the wall at the perfect height. For the bedroom, I bought an entire new set. A platform bed with an upholstered headboard in soft gray velvet. Matching nightstands. A new dresser. Fresh bedding in white and silver tones. Gerald's office became my office. I bought a sleek desk in white oak, a comfortable chair, floating shelves for my books. I hung inspirational art on the walls. This space would be about my work, my success, my future. Every room became mine. While the house transformed physically, my life was transforming too. Work became a refuge and a challenge in the best way. My boss called me into his office 2 days after I returned. We have a new development project. Mixed-use space in the downtown area. Retail on the ground floor, apartments above. The budget is significant. I want you to lead it. Me? You've proven yourself on every project. This is the natural next step. Are you interested? Absolutely. Good. You start next week. There's a significant raise attached to the promotion. You'll be managing a team of 5. I walked out of that office with a smile I couldn't contain. Lead developer. Team manager. Significant raise. Gerald had once said I cared too much about work. What he'd really meant was that he was intimidated by my success. The project consumed me in the best way. I threw myself into planning, coordinating with architects, meeting with city officials. I worked late some nights, but now I was working for myself, building my own career, not trying to balance someone else's ego. My team was talented and motivated. We had good chemistry. Within 3 weeks, we had initial designs approved. Within 6 weeks, we had investors lined up. This project was going to be huge, and I was at the center of it. One evening, as I was leaving the office around 7, my colleague Jennifer stopped me. Naomi, can I ask you something personal? Sure. How are you doing? With everything that happened with your husband? I'd been open about the divorce at work. No point in hiding it. Everyone would find out eventually. I'm doing well, actually. Better than I expected. You seem different. More confident, maybe? I feel different. Lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down. Jennifer nodded. My sister went through a divorce last year. She said the same thing. Like she could finally breathe. That's exactly it. Well, you look great. And this project is going to be amazing. You're going to kill it. Outside of work, I started doing things I'd let slide during the marriage. I joined a book club with Tanya. I started going to yoga classes 3 times a week. I called old friends I'd lost touch with. My relationship with my mother deepened too. We talked on the phone almost every day. She came over on weekends to see the house changes, to cook dinner together, to just be present. You're blooming, she said one Saturday as we sat on my new couch. That's the word. You're blooming. It's strange. I was so worried about the divorce. But now that it's happening, I feel more myself than I have in years. That's because you're not shrinking yourself anymore. You don't have to make yourself smaller to make someone else feel bigger. I didn't realize I was doing that. We all do it sometimes. In relationships, in friendships, at work. We adjust ourselves to fit. But when you're with the right person, you don't have to shrink. You both expand. Gerald wanted me to shrink. I know, baby. I saw it. But you're too big a person to stay small for long. 6 weeks after Gerald moved out, the divorce papers were served. James called to tell me. He's been formally served. He has 30 days to respond. What do you think he'll do? His attorney will advise him to settle. Going to trial will cost more money than he has, and the outcome is virtually certain. He has no claim to the house. We have evidence of financial misconduct, and the adultery is documented. He'd be smart to accept a basic division of actual marital assets and move on. But will he be smart? We'll see. Some people fight on principle even when it's against their own interest. Gerald did fight at first. His attorney sent a counteroffer demanding half of my retirement account, half of the equity in the house he claimed I'd gained during the marriage, and 3 years of alimony. James responded with our evidence. The documentation that the house was separate property. The bank records showing Gerald's theft from our joint account. The emails proving his intent to defraud. 2 weeks later, Gerald's attorney sent a revised offer. They'd accept a split of marital assets only, no claim to the house, no alimony, and they'd return the $15,000 Gerald had taken from savings. Take it, James advised. This is a clean exit. You keep your house, your separate assets, and you get your money back. The retirement account split is unavoidable, but you're the higher earner, so the net effect is minimal. I agreed. I signed the papers. 3 months after the lockout, my divorce was finalized. I was single. I was free. I was myself again. To celebrate, I threw a party. Not a pity party, not a divorce party. A housewarming party for the home I'd reclaimed. 30 people came. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, family. We filled the house with laughter and music and joy. Mrs. Patterson from down the street brought her famous lemon cake. I'm so glad to see you happy, dear. You deserve this. My cousin from California flew in as a surprise. I had to see the house that caused all that drama. It's beautiful. Just like you. Tanya gave a toast in the living room. Everyone gathered around. To Naomi, who showed us all what it means to protect yourself, stand up for yourself, and come out stronger on the other side. To new beginnings. Everyone raised their glasses. To new beginnings. I looked around at the faces of people who genuinely cared about me. My chosen family. The people who'd supported me through the worst and celebrated with me now. This was my life. These were my people. This was my home. Gerald had tried to take it all. But he'd only succeeded in stripping away the parts that didn't serve me anymore. The pretense, the compromise, the shrinking of myself to fit his expectations. What remained was real. Strong. Mine. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood in my living room looking at the space I'd recreated. Every piece of furniture I'd chosen. Every paint color I'd picked. Every decoration that reflected my taste. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was from Gerald. I drove by the house today. Saw all the cars. Looks like you're doing well. I stared at the message for a long moment. I could block him. I probably should block him. But something made me respond. I'm doing well. Better than well. I hope you find your way to that too. It was generous, probably more generous than he deserved. But I meant it. Not because I forgave him, but because his misery or happiness no longer affected me. I was free of him in every way that mattered. He didn't respond, and I blocked his number right after. I didn't need closure from Gerald. I'd already closed that chapter myself. The story of my marriage was over. The story of my life after was just beginning, and it was going to be better than I'd ever imagined. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was having lunch with Tanya at a downtown cafe when I saw them. Gerald and Brittany. Sitting at a table near the window, their body language tense. They didn't see me, but I saw them clearly. Gerald looked different. Thinner, tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. His shirt was wrinkled, which was unlike him. He'd always been particular about his appearance. Brittany looked frustrated, her arms crossed, her mouth moving in what looked like an argument. Is that them? Tanya whispered, following my gaze. Yeah. Want to leave? No. I'm not running from my own lunch. They can leave if they're uncomfortable. We stayed. I ate my salad and tried not to watch, but I couldn't help noticing how miserable they both looked. Whatever relationship they'd thought they'd have, this wasn't it. As if she could feel me watching, Brittany's eyes swept the room and landed on me. Her face went pale. She said something to Gerald and he turned to look. Our eyes met across the restaurant. I didn't look away. I just calmly took another bite of my salad and continued my conversation with Tanya as if nothing had happened. Gerald stood up abruptly, threw cash on the table, and they left. Practically ran out of the cafe. Well, Tanya said, that was satisfying. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't have to. Just being yourself, being happy was enough. Later that week, I learned more about Gerald's situation through the office gossip network. His workplace had completed their investigation into his relationship with Brittany. Both of them had been given written warnings. Gerald had been demoted from his senior sales position back to a regular sales role, with a corresponding pay cut. Brittany had quit rather than face the daily awkwardness of working there after the scandal. Apparently she moved back home with her parents, my colleague Jennifer told me. I heard it through a friend who works there. The whole thing blew up their lives. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing this. I didn't feel vindication. I felt nothing. Their problems were no longer my problems. What I did feel was grateful. Grateful that I'd prepared, that I'd been smart, that I'd protected myself from becoming collateral damage in Gerald's implosion. A week later, I got a call from Barbara, Gerald's mother. Naomi, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Of course, Barbara. I wanted you to know that I'm moving to Arizona. My sister is there and I need a change. Before I go, I wanted to see you. Would that be all right? We met for coffee at a quiet shop near her house. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, more worn down. How is Gerald? I asked because it seemed polite. Not well. He lost his apartment because he couldn't afford the rent after his demotion. He's living with a friend now. Brittany left him about a month ago. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Sorry, I mean. I thought about it honestly. I'm sorry that he's struggling. But I'm not sorry that I'm not part of that struggle anymore. That's fair. More than fair, really. Barbara sipped her coffee. I raised him better than this, you know. His father and I taught him to respect women, to honor commitments. I don't know where we went wrong. You didn't go wrong. Gerald made his own choices. He's angry, Naomi. At you, at Brittany, at his job. At everyone but himself. He won't take responsibility for any of it. That sounds about right. I tried to talk to him. Told him he brought this on himself. He hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. I'm sorry about that. I know you two were close. We were. But I can't support what he did. I can't pretend it was okay. You were a good wife to him. A good daughter to me. He threw that away for nothing. We talked for another hour. She told me about her plans in Arizona, her hopes for a fresh start. I told her about my new project at work, the house renovations, my life moving forward. You're going to be fine, she said as we parted. Better than fine. You're going to be wonderful. Thank you, Barbara. For everything. For raising a son who was good to me for a while, even if it didn't last. For being kind to me. For calling me daughter. We hugged, and I knew it would be the last time I'd see her. She was closing her chapter with this city just like I'd closed mine with her son. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. I'd been tagged in several posts on social media. It was an article in a local business magazine. Rising stars in real estate development. Meet the women reshaping our city's skyline. I was featured. There was a photo of me at the construction site of my current project, wearing a hard hat and pointing at blueprints. The article detailed my career trajectory, my recent promotion, and quoted me talking about sustainable urban development. Naomi Fletcher represents the new generation of developers who balance profit with community impact, the article read. Her latest project, a mixed-use space in the downtown corridor, prioritizes affordable housing units alongside market-rate apartments, proving that development can be both successful and socially responsible. My phone rang. It was my boss. Have you seen the article? Just now. This is huge, Naomi. Great press for the company and for you personally. Investors are already calling about getting involved in our projects. That's wonderful. It's more than wonderful. This is the kind of publicity that launches careers to the next level. Well done. After we hung up, I sat with the magazine open on my laptop, looking at my own face smiling back at me. This woman in the photo looked confident, accomplished, happy. She looked nothing like the woman who'd stood at the curb 7 months ago watching her belongings scattered on a lawn. But she was the same woman. Just unburied. Just freed from trying to be smaller than she was. Tanya sent me the article with heart emojis. My mother called crying happy tears. My team at work congratulated me. The notifications kept coming all day. Among them, a text from an unknown number. Saw the article. Congratulations. I didn't need to ask who it was. Gerald's timing was predictable. He'd see me succeeding and feel compelled to reach out. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Again. However many times he tried to contact me, I'd block him again. He didn't get access to my life anymore. Not my struggles, not my successes. Nothing. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. I sat alone at a table by the window, ordered a glass of wine and the most expensive entree on the menu. I used to think eating alone meant being lonely. Now I understood it meant being content in your own company. I had my phone, a good book, excellent food, and nobody's mood to manage but my own. The server brought my meal. Perfectly cooked salmon with roasted vegetables. I took my time eating, savoring each bite, watching the city lights come on as evening settled in. At the next table, a couple was arguing quietly. The woman's face was tight with frustration. The man looked defensive. I recognized that dynamic. I'd lived it for years. I felt grateful I wasn't there anymore. Grateful I'd had the strength to leave. Grateful I'd prepared well enough to make it possible. My phone buzzed. An email from James Morrison. Final divorce decree has been recorded. You're officially single. Congratulations on your freedom. I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to myself. to freedom, to new beginnings, to the life I was building without compromise. Gerald's karma wasn't that he'd lost me. His karma was that he had to live with himself and the choices he'd made. He had to wake up every day knowing he'd destroyed something good for something that turned out to be nothing. My karma was getting to build a life so full and satisfying that his betrayal became just a story I'd tell someday. Just a chapter in a much larger book. I finished my dinner, paid the check, and walked out into the warm evening air. The city felt full of possibility. My city. My life. My future. Whatever Gerald was doing tonight, wherever he was, it didn't matter. His story and mine had diverged completely. Mine was just getting to the good part. 6 months after the divorce was final, I attended a charity gala for an organization supporting youth education in underserved communities. It was the kind of event I used to avoid, the kind Gerald had always wanted to attend for the networking. Now I was here because I'd been invited as a featured guest, my development company having donated significantly to the cause. I wore a red dress, form-fitting and elegant. My hair was styled in soft waves. I felt beautiful, powerful, completely myself. Tanya was my plus one. She wore emerald green and together we made an entrance. "You look like you own this place," she whispered as we walked in. "I feel like I could." The ballroom was stunning. Chandeliers, white tablecloths, a live band playing jazz. City officials mingled with business leaders and philanthropists. This was the level I'd been working toward my entire career, and now I was here not as someone's wife but as myself. We found our table near the front. I was seated next to the mayor and a tech CEO whose company had just gone public. The kind of connections that could open doors for years to come. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. I was introduced during the program as one of the evening's major donors. People applauded. I stood and waved, feeling the warmth of recognition. During the networking portion of the evening, I was talking with a group of investors about my latest project when I saw him. Gerald. Across the room, wearing a suit that looked slightly too big on him, his weight loss more obvious in formal wear. He was standing alone near the bar, holding a drink, looking uncomfortable. Our eyes met. He looked away first, then back, then started walking toward me. "Oh no," Tanya said, appearing at my elbow. "Is he coming over here?" "Looks like it." "Want me to intercept?" "No. Let him come." The investors I'd been talking with moved away to refresh their drinks. Gerald reached me just as they left. "Naomi." "Gerald. You look amazing." "Thank you." An awkward silence stretched between us. I didn't fill it. I just waited. "Can we talk?" he finally asked. "Somewhere private?" "We can talk here. Briefly." He glanced around at the crowd. "I saw the article about you. The business magazine. Your project looks impressive." "It is impressive. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. I know that sounds strange, but I am." "You're right, it does sound strange." He flinched. "Naomi, I messed up. I know I did. What happened between us, how it ended, I've had a lot of time to think about it. And I realize now that I threw away the best thing in my life. You were good to me. Better than I deserved. I was an idiot." I looked at him carefully. He seemed genuine, but I'd believed his sincerity before and been wrong. "Is this where you ask if we can try again?" I asked. "Would you?" "If I asked?" "No." The word landed hard. He actually stepped back slightly. "Not even to talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about, Gerald. You made your choice. You planned it, you executed it, and you have to live with it. I've made my peace with what happened. I've moved on completely." "I haven't. That's not my problem anymore." "Naomi, please. I know I hurt you. I know I did terrible things. But we had 7 years together. That has to count for something." It did count for something. Past tense. Those 7 years taught me what I don't want in a relationship. They taught me what real betrayal looks like. They taught me how strong I am. So yes, they counted. But not in the way you want them to. So that's it? There's no chance for us. There was never a chance after you changed the locks. Actually, there was never a chance after you started stealing from our savings account. Or after you started planning with your lawyer how to take my house. Gerald, you didn't just cheat. You plotted. You schemed. You tried to take everything from me. And now you want me to feel sorry for you because it didn't work. I was angry. So was I. But I didn't steal, I didn't lie, and I didn't try to take what wasn't mine. We're different people, Gerald. We always were. I just didn't see it clearly until the end. People were starting to notice our conversation. A few heads had turned. Gerald noticed too. "Can we at least go somewhere quieter?" he asked. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here or not at all." He took a breath. I'm struggling, Naomi. The demotion, the money, living situation is temporary. I can't afford my own place right now. Brittany won't return my calls. My mother moved away. I'm alone. I'm sorry you're struggling. Genuinely. But that's a consequence of your choices, not my responsibility to fix. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I've changed. You haven't changed. You're just dealing with consequences you didn't expect. If everything had worked out the way you planned, if you'd gotten my house and my money and your girlfriend, would you be here right now saying you'd made a mistake? No. You'd be living in my house with Brittany, spending my money and never looking back. He couldn't argue with that because we both knew it was true. I loved you, he said quietly. Maybe you did in your own way. But you loved yourself more. And that's fine. People are allowed to be selfish. But I'm also allowed to protect myself from selfish people. That's what I did and I'd do it again. So there's really nothing I can say? There's nothing you need to say. You said everything you needed to say when you threw my belongings on the lawn. When you stood there with your girlfriend and laughed at me. When you thought you'd won. That was your final statement on our marriage. Everything after that is just noise. Brittany appeared then, walking up to the bar a few feet away. She saw us talking and froze. Brittany, I said, acknowledging her. She looked like she wanted to run, but instead she came over. Naomi. Hi. Hi. I'm sorry, she blurted out. For everything. I know I apologized before, but I need to say it again. What I did was wrong. What we did, she glanced at Gerald, was wrong. I appreciate you saying that. For what it's worth, I didn't know the full story. Gerald told me things that weren't true. But that's not an excuse. I should have walked away the minute I knew he was married. Yes, you should have. Are you two back together? I asked, though the answer was obvious from their body language. No, Brittany said quickly. We tried. It didn't work. Turns out a relationship built on lies doesn't have much foundation. Gerald looked uncomfortable. Good. I wanted to tell you, Brittany continued, that I'm leaving town, going back home, starting over. And I wanted to tell you that you didn't deserve what happened. You seem like a good person. Gerald's lucky he had you as long as he did. Thank you. Can I ask you something? Brittany said. How did you move on so fast? You seem so put together, so successful. Like none of this touched you. It touched me. It hurt. But I didn't let it define me. I had good preparation, good support, and good reasons to believe in myself. That made all the difference. Brittany nodded. I hope I can get there someday. You will. It just takes time and choosing yourself over what other people want you to be. She left after that. Gerald and I stood in awkward silence. I should go, he finally said. I'm obviously not welcome here. You're welcome at the gala. It's a public event. But you're not welcome in my life anymore, Gerald. That door is closed. Locked. And I have the only key. I get it. Do you? Because you keep trying to reach out. Texting me, showing up places you know I'll be. You need to stop. We're done. Completely. There's no friendship here, no closure you need from me, nothing. Move on with your life and let me move on with mine. Okay, he said, and for the first time he sounded like he actually heard me. Okay, I'll stop. I'll leave you alone. Thank you. He walked away, his shoulders slumped, heading toward the exit. Brittany had already left. They were each facing their own consequences, together or apart. Tanya appeared instantly. You okay? I'm fine. Better than fine. That was actually liberating. You were incredible. So calm, so clear. I meant every word I said. I know you did. That's what made it powerful. The rest of the evening was beautiful. I networked, I laughed, I made connections that would serve my career for years. The mayor told me about an upcoming project she wanted my company to bid on. The tech CEO asked if we could have lunch to discuss potential investments. I danced with Tanya, with colleagues, with new acquaintances. I drank champagne and ate tiny desserts and felt completely, thoroughly happy. Around 11 I stepped outside for air. The city sparkled below the venue's terrace. Cool wind touched my face. My phone had several messages. Friends congratulating me on my speech at the gala. My mother saying how proud she was. Business contacts following up on our conversations. Nothing from Gerald. Finally he'd heard me. I looked out at the city, my city where I'd built a career and a life. Where I'd survived betrayal and come out stronger. Where I was becoming exactly who I was meant to be. Gerald's appearance tonight hadn't shaken me. If anything, it had confirmed that I'd made the right choice. He was stuck in the past, wishing for what he'd lost. I was firmly in the present, building toward a future that had nothing to do with him. The confrontation I'd been dreading for months had happened, and it had been simple. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clear. I'd said what I needed to say, drawn my boundaries, and walked away. That's what closure really looked like. Not fireworks or big emotional scenes. Just quiet certainty and the ability to move forward without looking back. I went back inside to finish the evening on my terms, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. Gerald could have his regrets. I had my freedom. That was a more than fair trade. 1 year after the lockout, I stood in the backyard of my house, looking at the garden I'd planted. Roses along the fence, the ones Gerald had complained about. Herbs in raised beds near the kitchen door. A small vegetable patch that was actually producing tomatoes and peppers. I'd hired a landscaper to help design it, but I did most of the work myself. Getting my hands dirty, watching things grow, it was therapeutic. Each plant represented something I was building for myself. The house behind me was completely mine now. Every room reflected my taste. Every piece of furniture was something I'd chosen. Even the appliances had been upgraded, the old ones that Gerald and I had picked together replaced with stainless steel ones that worked better. It was a Saturday morning in early June. The air was warm but not too hot. Perfect for being outside. My mother was visiting, sitting on the new patio furniture with a cup of coffee, watching me work. "You're good at this," she said. "The garden looks beautiful." "Thanks, Mom. It's been fun to learn. Your grandmother would have loved this. She always said gardening teaches you patience." "It does. You plant something and wait. You water and weed and hope. But you can't force it to grow faster. You just have to trust the process. That's life too, isn't it?" "Yeah, it really is." My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but local. I answered. "Hello. Miss Fletcher? This is Susan Rodriguez from the mayor's office. The mayor wanted to personally invite you to serve on the city's development advisory board. She was impressed with your work and your approach to community-focused development." I looked at my mother, covering the phone. "They want me on the city advisory board." She smiled wide. "I'd be honored," I told Susan. "Please thank the mayor for thinking of me." We worked out the details. First meeting next month. 2-year term. The kind of position that could shape city policy and lead to even bigger opportunities. After I hung up, my mother hugged me. "Look at you. Advisory boards and magazine features and successful projects. You're doing it, baby." "I really am, aren't I? Your grandmother is looking down so proud right now." "I hope so. Everything she taught me, everything you taught me, it all mattered." We spent the rest of the morning in the garden. My mother helped me plant new flowers, marigolds and bright orange, while we talked about everything and nothing. Around noon, Tanya arrived with sandwiches from our favorite deli. "Lunch for the working ladies," she announced, setting the bag on the patio table. We ate in the sunshine, laughing about Tanya's latest dating disaster. She'd gone out with a guy who spent the entire date talking about his cryptocurrency investments. "I pretended I had a work emergency and left after 40 minutes, she said. "Life's too short for boring dates." "You'll find someone," I said. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll just enjoy being single and fabulous. Like you." "I'm not looking for anyone either," I said. "I'm happy just building my life right now." "Have you thought about dating again?" my mother asked. "Not really. I'm open to it eventually, but I'm not in a rush. I like where I am. Independent, successful, free to make decisions without compromising. Why would I rush to change that?" "Fair point," Tanya said. "Though if the right person comes along, you should be open to it." "I am open. Just not actively seeking. There's a difference." My mother nodded approval. "That's exactly the right attitude." Later that afternoon, after everyone had left, I went inside to work on some project plans. The office I'd created was my favorite room. Large windows, natural light, my desk positioned to look out at the garden. I was reviewing blueprints when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the window and saw a delivery person holding a large flat package. "Delivery for Naomi Fletcher." I signed for it and brought the package inside. It was from my company, my name on the return label. Inside was a framed photo. The entire team from my development project, taken at the ribbon-cutting ceremony last month. We'd completed the mixed-use building on time and under budget. It was already 60% leased, with a waiting list for the affordable housing units. In the photo, I stood in the center of the team, everyone smiling. Behind us, the building rose against a blue sky. Our building. Our success. There was a plaque at the bottom of the frame. Leadership isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about creating space for everyone to be heard. Thank you for leading us to build something meaningful. I hung it on the wall above my desk, stepping back to look at it. This was the life I'd built. Success on my own terms. Work that mattered. A team that respected me. A home that was truly mine. The past year had been the hardest of my life and the best of my life, somehow both at once. Hard because divorce is always hard, even when it's necessary. Best because I'd discovered who I was when I wasn't trying to be someone's wife. I thought about Gerald sometimes. Not with longing or anger, but with something closer to distant curiosity. I hoped he'd figured his life out. I hoped he'd learned something. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. The man I'd married was gone, or maybe he'd never really existed in the way I thought he did. Either way, he was part of my past, not my present or future. My phone buzzed with an email. An invitation to speak at a real estate development conference in Chicago. They wanted me on a panel about sustainable urban planning. All expenses paid, speaking fee included, opportunity to network with developers from across the country. I accepted immediately. This was the life I'd chosen. Movement, growth, challenges that excited me rather than drained me. Every opportunity one said yes to led to 3 more. Every project I completed opened new doors. That evening I made dinner for myself. Pasta with fresh vegetables from my garden, bread, a glass of wine. I ate at my kitchen table, reading a book Tanya had recommended, completely content in my own company. After dinner, I walked through the house one more time. A nightly ritual I'd developed. Kitchen clean, living room tidy, bedroom peaceful. Everything in its place. Everything mine. In the bedroom, I looked at the photos I'd hung on one wall. My mother and grandmother, smiling together at my college graduation. Me and Tanya on a weekend trip to the mountains last month. My team at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The life I was building, documented in moments of joy. There were no photos of Gerald. I'd packed them all away months ago. Maybe someday I'd look at them with nostalgia, or maybe I'd never look at them again. Either way was fine. I got ready for bed, my bed in my room in my house. The sheets were soft. The room smelled like the lavender candle I'd lit earlier. Everything was exactly how I wanted it. As I lay in the dark, I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Standing at that curb, watching my belongings scattered on the lawn, making the phone call that changed everything. I'd been scared that day, even though I'd tried not to show it. Scared the plan wouldn't work. Scared I'd lose everything. Scared I'd end up broken and defeated. But I'd had a plan. I'd had preparation. I'd had the legacy of strong women who'd taught me to protect myself. And I'd had the courage to execute everything when the moment came. The revenge Gerald thought he was getting, publicly humiliating me, taking my house, starting fresh with his girlfriend, it had all backfired spectacularly. The real revenge was this. Me thriving. Happy. Successful. Building a life so full that his betrayal became just a minor detail in a much bigger story. He tried to take everything. Instead, he'd freed me to become everything. My phone was on the nightstand. One last check before sleep. A text from a colleague about Monday's meeting. A reminder about the advisory board orientation next month. A message from my mother with a heart emoji. And one from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then opened it. Hi Naomi, this is Kevin from the charity gala. We met briefly at your table. I hope this isn't too forward, but I'd love to take you to coffee sometime. No pressure, just coffee. Here's my number if you're interested. I smiled in the dark. Kevin. The tech CEO who talked with me about sustainable building materials and seemed genuinely interested in both the topic and in me as a person. I didn't reply immediately. I'd think about it tomorrow. Maybe I'd say yes, maybe I'd say no. Both options were fine because the decision was completely mine to make. The important thing was that I was open to possibility. Open to meeting new people, having new experiences, building new connections. Not desperate for them, not dependent on them, just open. That was the gift of this past year. Learning that I was complete on my own. That I didn't need someone else to make me whole. That my worth wasn't tied to being someone's wife or girlfriend. I was whole by myself, and anything I built with someone else would be addition, not completion. I turned off my phone and settled into sleep. Tomorrow was Sunday. I'd sleep in, make a big breakfast, work in the garden, maybe call Kevin back. Maybe not. The day was mine to shape however I wanted. The house was quiet around me. My house. My sanctuary. My proof that I could survive anything and come out stronger. Gerald had changed the locks and thought he'd won. But all he'd really done was force me to find the keys to my own kingdom. And once I had those keys, I'd built something he could never take away. The revenge wasn't what I'd done to him. The revenge was what I'd done for myself. I'd taken back my power, rebuilt my life, and created something beautiful from the wreckage he'd left behind. This was my new beginning. Not starting over because I carried forward everything I'd learned and earned, but beginning the next chapter with clarity, strength, and absolute certainty in who I was. I'd been tested by fire and emerged refined, not destroyed. I'd faced betrayal and chosen dignity over drama. I'd been underestimated and proven everyone wrong. The story of Gerald and what he'd done would fade with time. But the story of what I'd built after? That story was just getting started, and it was going to be magnificent. I smiled in the dark and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of gardens and buildings and all the beautiful things I'd create in the years to come.